I think people are drawn to handmade products because they actually capture a part of the maker. You know, there's like an energy or an essence within the product that you're sharing with the user, and that it's a very subtle and perhaps not conscious thing, but I think we yearn for that, and there are fewer opportunities for us to experience that, I think, in the way that our culture is developing. In many parts of our society and culture that's not really available, so through handmade products we can tap into that connection. I make work for some restaurants like Movida and Ginger Boy, Anyada, Gigi Baba, Josie Bones. I first came into contact with pottery when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and my parents enrolled me in a ceramics course at the Community Arts Centre out in Templestowe where I grew up, and I think I was one of the only kids in the class, and I got into it then and have fond memories of the contact with the material and the processes and introduction to the wheel, and it stuck with me. And then 20 or so years later I came back to it and started doing pottery at the Carlton Arts Centre. For some time I felt like I was overly involved in taking things out of my environment. There's a little saying that I kept largely to myself, you know, that I wanted to start making some things rather than just taking some things, you know, and I've found that very enriching, the idea of making and contributing some things to my environment and the people around me, as opposed to just consuming and collecting things from it. I think one of the things I like is the sort of the playful nature of it, the grounding influence of that. It's like playing with mud, or you know, something fairly primal about it in that regard. Well, this actually is probably one of my favourites. It's a bit worse for wear. It only gets washed about once a week, and I drink my tea from it while I'm at the studio. It's I suppose one of the first earlier pieces I made, also with a decal of a pigeon on the front. I like the sort of, I suppose, the mundane quality of it. You know, the pigeon and the fact there are so many of them around in Melbourne, and they're a bit of a pest, but I think they're quite beautiful at the same time. So. There's an underlying idea of simplicity, or trying to create an object that has a strong sense of utility, and with not too many flourishes. So I think the notion of it being a tool that helps to facilitate eating and the enjoyment of eating is quite important to me. I also quite enjoy the sort of the subtle anonymity that's involved in the pieces being out there and being used, and I can sort of watch from afar. You know, I might go into a restaurant or a cafe and see someone using it, but they don't really know that I made it, and there's a strange pleasure in that. I suppose it's a little bit voyeuristic. I think that there's greater sort of integrity and honesty in acknowledging that, you know, no two things are exactly the same, so let's stop pretending. When I'm making things, you know, sometimes the pieces may not turn out as I wanted them to, or they break in the process, and sometimes my kiln breaks down halfway through a firing, and the whole firing is unsuccessful, and I'll have to spend a day or two fixing things up. And I used to be tearing my hair out in the early days when I was first making things, but I think more so now I'm more open to accepting that the problems are going to happen. I can't stop them. You know, that it's a bit like, I suppose, a relationship. Sometimes you might be a bit shy about putting yourself forward, thinking, well, I'm not quite up to it yet, not quite resolved, haven't quite sorted out my own stuff. But then you put it out there, and people respond okay. You know, it's actually okay.